So, welcome back everyone to the MIP Alumni Conference. We hope you enjoyed that first session. My name is Dan Roman. I'm a former Israeli football player and a graduate of the MIP. And I'm really looking forward bringing you this next very important session on the sometimes difficult topic of mental health in football. A short introduction on my side, and then I will introduce our fantastic speakers. Historically speaking, we have witnessed the game of football evolving in almost all its aspects: the organization of the competition, fan experience, rules of the game, and obviously professional aspects, tactical tendencies, methods of training, and so on. As far as I perceive it, one major thing left neglected, and this is the players' well-being during and after their career. According to a FIFPro study conducted in 2015, 1 out of 3 players is experiencing symptoms related to mental health issues, such as anxiety, depression, stress. But up until recently, those issues were not discussed. And to put it frankly, no one cared about what is happening in the backstage of this beautiful circus. Nowadays, the game is physically more demanding than ever, and with social medias, players are exposed to constant criticism and scrutiny, which are often brutal. There is no place to hide, and everything is out on the open. On the other side, in recent years, players are more and more open and courageous to discuss their mental health issues in public. So for me, this issue is touching so many aspects of the game we love. First and foremost, from the perspective of understanding what does it mean being a professional football player, but also in a broader sense regarding the way we regulate and design our competitions, and even the essence and the very meaning and place of the game in our society. So, to introduce our speakers, joining us today is former Arsenal defender Per Mertesacker, who is at the club as their head of the academy, working with young players. Dr. Michael Bennett, Director of Player Wellbeing at the Professional Footballers Association. Manisha Taylor, MBE, Assistant Head of Coaching at QPR FC. And Christian Ludhart, a sports psychologist at FC Bayern Munich Youth Academy. Hi guys, how are you doing?
Thanks, all good.
Thanks, all good.
Very proud that you are with us today for this important discussion. Let's start with you, Per. Please tell us about some of the difficulties you had as an international player.
Yeah. Where do you want to start? No, I'll give you kind of brief insight. Obviously, as you spoke about, a lot of scrutiny or a lot of pressures around the game, not only physically but mental. I think what was important for me as I was growing up with football, because I love the game, was kind of my background, where I was coming from. Obviously, I wasn't as highlighted as much as probably a lot of young players, nowadays, and not being kind of in a position where always social media is on me every single week. So I was quite kind of fortunate, and I throve off that kind of possibility. But I would say is my biggest concern, during my career was obviously short term, was always the next kind of game which I had. So what I did with it, always try to prepare as much as I can, for that match day, because I knew mentally I would struggle, and match day would feel different for me in terms of the nervousness, in terms of what I would feel playing in front of tens of thousands of people. So that would be a struggle for me, to kind of cope with that. I think during my time I kind of accepted it, but the amount of games players have and match days prepare for, this will only increase. And it was almost felt like after the game, obviously, if you would have won, brilliant. But there was a bit of relief all of the time, when there was some kind of end of the game, and there was kind of the wait for the next game. So there would be a lot, that can be discussed. And I think for the players nowadays, the burden of match day to perform well is getting more increased. But as I started my conversation off, I wasn't always in the limelight and highlighting the burden in general of football is increasingly higher. So players, parents expecting to have kind of a career, and if they don't, that can be a big of a struggle. So I was kind of a bit more protected in that sense. But anyway, going through the game for 15 years, I had my struggles.
Yes. So the way I see it, there is the actual stress of, for example, not making a mistake that would lead to conceding a goal or something. But there is also the environment, which is not so tolerant regarding these issues. What about the environment? Did you feel that you are alone, that someone can support you, even your teammates or someone from the club or something?
I think what was always the best for me in terms of, playing a team sports was obviously having, teammates around me, and I would demand in training session, to have that kind of input, from everyone around me. I think at that time, going from a club, especially to a national team of Germany, we had psychology support, and I always would feel, kind of open to speak about things. However, I would feel the pressure of the match day and kind of, being in a position where I would feel really uncomfortable just before the game. I think I took it upon myself to just deal with it, because I kind of said I accept that I need to go through this, on my own. That's kind of how I dealt with a lot of things. However, after my career, by not speaking, at that time, as empathetic I would speak now about it, I think there's some form of hesitancy, back in the days to speak about my weaknesses, who I believe now were my biggest strength. So I think there is a return now to more openness around players who have experienced it, and the environments that will help players to speak more about their feelings. This is what it's all about, Can we as human beings speak more about what we feel? Everyone will carry something, and by opening up, I hope that helps more and more players, to speak about their weaknesses, who will eventually be their biggest strength. That's what I believe, and that's what we as role models now in the game need to speak more about. So I think there is more and more opportunities for players to find a person in their environment to speak to. I solely believe, whether that's a teammate or a staff member, there are more opportunities.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Bennett, maybe would you like to elaborate on the things that football players have to deal with, on the reasons for the mental health issues?
Yeah, going back to what Pierre says, obviously my issues, what I had when I played, was the pressure of the game. I came into the game at 16 years of age, and wasn't told about the demands of the game, wasn't told about the pressures of the game. So coming in from playing with mates on a Sunday, and then coming into a professional environment, was a real issue for me. And I think that's what impacted my well-being. No one tells you about the pressure of coming to a professional environment and the demands that are required of you. And that was a real issue for me. And at the time when I was playing, there was no one for me to speak to about my concerns and my worries or my fears. And then if you think about, a big thing for me at the time was, when you are in a youth team change room, and you're amongst friends and mates, and then you make it to the first team. At my time, I was 17 years of age. You make it to the first team, the pressures increases 100%, because you then go into an environment where it's even more so pressurized. So for me, I had to wear a mask, if you want to use that terminology, and be what football wanted me to be, and wasn't able to be myself because I wasn't able to articulate how I was feeling with anybody. So I think the catalyst for me doing the work that I do now with players is that I recognise that it's important to have players have the opportunity to be able to speak to someone in a private and confidential setting, to enable them to deal with the emotional side of the game, but obviously outside of the game. Going back to your question, Dan, some of the issues that we're finding is usually around this time of the year now, where players have been told or are being told whether they're going to be getting a new contract. Obviously, we're not talking about just young players, we're talking about senior players as well, because you think about senior players have families and bills to pay, and there's concerns around whether they're going to get a new contract. We'll have to move from another country, uproot the family. The lower division players that aren't getting 2 or 3 year contracts are getting 1 year contracts. So there's a constant pressure in regards to trying to establish whether or not they're going to be able to look after their families, and that brings a real emotional pressure and baggage with it. And the other ones that you usually get are, with that, are the financial issues that come with that. Obviously, you have the players that have got long-term injuries. You've got the players that are living away from families. You've got the players that new manager comes in. So there's a number of different issues that can impact these players' well-being. And so what we found is that when we go and deliver our workshops at clubs, we talk to players about the industry hazards and the industry hazards they're going to come into contact with in this journey and career of football, and just make them aware of what that might look like. And then also we make them aware of what support the PFA offers them. As Piers mentioned there, we want the players to go and speak to their club, their psychologists, and someone at the club that they feel comfortable talking about their concerns to. But we're aware that some players aren't comfortable speaking to individuals at the club because it might impact them playing, it might impact them getting a contract. So the PFA, isn't part of the family, isn't part of the football club. We're just the union for the players that are here to provide support. So that's the kind of the aim of my player wellbeing department, is to provide private and confidential support for players as and when they need it.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting points. So, Manisha, according to your experience, you have some ventures in this field. How do you see the world is changing in this aspect? What could we do to support the players? And is the environment really changing? Is it better for the players now?
Yeah, I think if I think about discussions around mental health and well-being, we've definitely evolved. So I remember when I started out in education, and in the early 2000s, it's conversations around your feelings and your emotions were certainly not as we see them now. And then when I took the transition into football, I started at QPR in 2016, and I've certainly seen the professional game evolve in terms of accountability, especially because I think that, just like with what's been mentioned already, if we want to encourage our young people to be open and transparent about how they feel, I think fundamentally what's key is the environment in which they're in. So if we don't create a culture that's inclusive and one that's fair, where players can express themselves without any fear of criticism, any judgment, I think we're almost then on our way to ensuring that that they're resilient. And because there is an inclusive culture and environment there, that they have people that they can go and talk to. And I think because now with EPPP and the fact that there is greater accountability on clubs to ensure that they have people in place full time, particularly with the Cat 1 clubs around, having somebody in charge of player care, in charge of safeguarding, that there's a point of contact there. And then you've got the fact that you've got external governing bodies, like the PFA, like Kick It Out, like the FA and so on, who you can also draw upon to come in and deliver workshops. But, ultimately, the coaches and the people on the grass have the most amount of contact with the players. So one of the things we found is ensuring that if we can equip our coaches to make sure that they're in a position where they're first and foremost confident in recognizing what to notice and what to look for. So then that comes with, no doubt experience, but it also comes with training. They perhaps can then be those people on the ground to be maybe mental health champions who can then help the players, but also pass that information on. And, clubs, of course, will have their own reporting procedures. So I think ultimately the people on the grass need to be equipped with having the confidence and the know-how to understand what to look for in terms of signs and symptoms, so that they can then either intervene or pass it on to a senior member of staff.
Thank you. Christian, could you please tell me about the things being done at Munich Academy? How do you build your players to deal with those things?
Yeah, I think what Manisha just said fits quite well into what we have done recently, but over the last years. We've advanced the Mental Health Awareness Month, and we did a project together with Man United and Benfica, and had the whole month of March to do what Manisha was just talking about, to educate staff, to create a psychologically safe and a psychologically informed environment, where we actually talked with all people involved in youth development about mental health, but not only in a sense of preventing mental health issues or detecting mental health issues, but promoting a culture of well-being where the player feels appreciated, not only with his performance, but as a human being, and with lots of strengths also outside of football. And so this was 1 month that we did, but of course this is a topic that is an ongoing issue. And I think the key to it is to foster vulnerability, the ability to talk openly about emotions, not only in players, but in the whole environment, and to take an influence also on the language that we use, on the spaces we create for these open dialogues, and also space for self-determination, which can be quite a challenge in a very structured and in a lot of senses very professional environment already for youth players.
Interesting. The thing I'm thinking about is interesting, because one can say, and I will take the devil's advocate role, that professional football, okay, let's discuss for a minute about professional football. It's not healthy. You know, it's not healthy physically. It's a very cruel world with a very narrow sense. Everyone are accepting the logic of giving everything just to win, okay? And maybe this is the world of football, and it's part of it, and we have to accept it. What do you think about this perception? Yeah, whoever wants to address
to me. Do you want to hear from me? I mean,
of course.
Yeah. Essentially, you know, when I kind of accepted as well that every single year I had some form of injury, right? So almost and when I felt it was a long season with playing numerous of games, I certainly at some stage, you know, just collapsed. Even if I thought I had a 2 or 3 weeks break after a long season, I would run on the pitch and, you know, my knee would just not accept that I would run again, you know, and it would have a meniscus tear. And it was clear to me by looking back, that was the situation when I wasn't ready, you know, to come back. So just my mental well-being had such a great effect and is connected to my physical well-being. You know, that's the first thing I would say. And I had to, it was almost for me like where I had to accept this in order to then be really relieved. And because I had an argument, I could go on rehab now for 3, 4, 5 weeks and just could, you know, let myself, you know, deal with all the situation and just be happy again and start again. I would be in a position to accept that, you know, because, and it's not only that, football gave a lot to me, you know, gave absolutely a lot of friendships, a lot of values that I hold until now. Football have given, the game have given to me, but it took away a lot as well, you know. So it's that there is the balance that we have to admit that football is a lovely game that gives a lot to millions of people, but for some protagonists, they will feel the pressure and it will take away some stuff from them. And I felt the same way, where, you know, being injured would sometimes be a relief for me, because then I would step away from the scrutiny that I would face naturally. So playing at the highest level or playing the game, everyone would feel, you know, certainly some form of pressure to deliver, which means is scrutiny on your body and mind. And that is absolutely connected. So there's an acceptance of that I would vomit before every single game because I would play in front of 60,000. This is just reality of it, you know. I accepted that at that time. Did I speak about a lot? No, I didn't. I just started speaking about it when I finished, almost, you know. Then I would speak about the person, you know, within the shirt, basically. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff, but you know, conversations and creating safe spaces, you know, everything that was said in here is crucially important for the next generation of players, because there will be much more scrutiny on different platforms.
Yeah.
Dan, can I just say, Dan, I was going to say what Pierre said there. You know, we have to remember that, you know, a number of these young players are starting on that journey. Young men and young women are starting that journey to be professional footballers, and we know that a high percentage of them won't make it. And those who do make it, you know, the percentages go higher and higher, leaving the game. Pierre said something important, which is something that I tend to say to the players all the time when I see them. You know, I just became a therapist in 2004 because there wasn't any support for me when I played. I wanted to be able to offer that therapeutic support to players then. But what I realised was that we have to remember in this world of football that we're dealing with a person that plays football. We're not dealing with a footballer. We're dealing with a person that plays football. So the idea for me is that, you know, I focus on this person and offer what support we can offer this person. We know that the pressure, some people are going to find it difficult to deal with the pressure. We know that, you know, David Beckham was the one who quoted this, that football is an emotional roller coaster. We know that football is constantly up and down. You know, if you're in the first team, if you're in the squad, if you start, if you have a good game, a bad game, you know, that's just nightmares of football. But what about throughout the week, where, you know, you've got 20 odd players trying to strive for 11 places? You know, it's an emotional roller coaster. So with the greater game is, and Pierre's talking about the pressure and talking about the demands and talking about the expectation, there's a lot on these young individuals, and so their well-being will be affected. And it's about how we can, as a club, as a union, as an organisation, how we can best provide the best support we can for these individuals, so that, you know, we know that the clubs will take care of the physical aspect of these individuals, and clubs are now looking at the emotional side of it. But you don't have one without the other; they both go together, so they both need to be treated the same way.
Yeah. So we have the discourse that is changing. Okay, players are feeling more comfortable to discuss those issues. We have more support, professionals who can help the football players. And Manisha also mentioned the coaches themselves. What else can we do to, from one hand, build toughness of the players at academy level, but without, you know, losing something in the way regarding the person? How do you see it, Christian, Manisha?
I was directly thinking about one important concept here, the concept of identity, because a lot of coaches say that when they first encounter sports psychologists, oh, now we have to be really soft with the players, we have to be really nice and kind. And I think there's one quote that I always like, which is, honesty is kindness. And it's not about being less tough with the players, but I think it's about having an unconditional positive regard for the human being and being really honest with the players, because they are going to face a journey that will take them through adversity, and where they will have to deal with those challenges. But if we equip them well, we need to prepare them, but in a frame where they feel welcomed as a whole person, and not just rated or judged by their performance, and where they are also able to develop other sides of their personality, of their interests, which is really challenging, because here at Bayern Munich, for example, the players come 15 minutes before training from school, and afterwards they leave. So there is little time to explore your identity in a very varied way. And it's a very one-dimensional track, but I think it's, in the long term, it will pay off if we give them more space and freedom to develop other interests and other identities besides the footballer.
Yeah, just leading on to what Christian said, I think trying as much as possible to ensure that the curriculum and the diet of learning that the players receive it's beyond football. So, you know, there'll be Cat 1 clubs or Premier League clubs who may have day release programs, and this could be integrated into that. But I think that we could also be a little bit more adaptable. So, for example, a club like ours, you know, who doesn't have a day release program, we use some part of the session on a cycle where we would deliver workshops to parents, we would deliver workshops to the players. At the moment with our 15-16s, we're using the first half an hour of their session to have a psychology or an analysis workshop, just to try and you know, develop that, you know, in terms of what's been spoken about with regards to, it's not just about their level of performance. Actually, what we need to do is our job when they come into the building is to ensure that they develop as human beings, but have a rounded diet of learning, because like what's been mentioned already, very few of them are actually going to make it as players. So I think ensuring that we have an integrated approach when we're delivering the football, and it's done holistically. And the other thing I'd also say is around reframing what perhaps winning looks like. So look, we all like to win, even the best developers will like to win, but it's actually, what does that winning look like? Is the winning about winning a match? Now, that's going to be obviously more important the older the players are, determined by where they are in the development pyramid. But is that winning about becoming a better communicator? Is that winning about developing an area of, you know, area of focus that they've been working on? Is that winning now about, I don't know, getting better at a 1v1 duel, whether that's defending or attacking and so on? So I think there are several things that still can be done. But I think definitely around ensuring that we have more of an integrated approach to the diet of learning that the footballers are receiving. And it's beyond football, because ultimately the aim is that they come into wanting to be professional footballers, but there is a lot more around that what are we going to do through the journey if they don't make it? So let's not ask that question when it comes to release. Let's not wait for that. Let's, you know, put them on a journey so that they're already thinking about their identity, and that their identity is beyond them just being identified by a particular club, because I think that's when it can become a little bit dangerous psychologically.
What do you mean by that? The last point, dangerous psychologically by identifying with one club?
So I think what's been mentioned already, that if, you know, you think, so we've just had our release meetings, and the under 14s were my first under 9s group, and to have to sit there and know that you've been with them on a journey for a number of years was heartbreaking, and it was certainly heartbreaking for the players as well. So I think that, you know, the number of times that the play, you know, the commitment, they're so, you know, consumed within an environment, whether that's the families, whether that's the player themselves. So I think that if you're a player and you've been consumed to an environment for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years and don't make it, that for me, I think is that's psychologically damaging. I think it's going to be damaging anyway. You know, you come in with the hope that, you know, you're going to get through the next season and so on, and that doesn't happen. So I think that the fact that it's so consuming, that there's a lot of commitment made by the families and the player, that I think in the duration of that time, we have to ensure that we embed some of those things that have been mentioned already around mental toughness and resilience, and that there's, again, I'll go back to holistic learning, that there's a holistic approach to the player's development, so that we're equipping them with those skills to be adaptable, so that they're able to overcome any setbacks and adversities that they're going to that they're going to experience through their footballing journey.
Amazing. On that point,
Dan, quick question. Yeah, I think the issue as well is, Misha mentioned there, is, you know, if you've got a 12-year-old or 14-year-old, and people forget that these boys have been at clubs 6, 7 years, and it's been a journey, and every 2 years they're trying to get a new contract, and you've got to recognise that they're obviously at school as well, with the pressures of school as well, and the school environment. And if they're at a top club, they're seen at their school as the main person at the school. So there's a double whammy of pressure going on there. I'll just pick up from what Manisha said there, which is a concern for me, is that if these boys do get released, or girls get released at 14, and they need wellbeing support, where does that come from? That's the biggest issue, because once they're in 16, they become a PFA member, they get that support from us. But it's the age group below that when they get released at 12, 14, 16, you what emotional support's in place for them, and that's the concern. I think that's another conversation.
Yeah, good point. Interesting point. Another thing, I'm also working at the moment in a youth academy, and for me, the most stressful thing for the players, for the young players, is their parents. I don't know how it is in other countries, but here is really, really difficult. You can see that the players themselves, they are tougher than what their parents think, for me, I think. And they can deal with winning and losing and disappointments, but the parents, they just put this immense pressure on them, even in one look. What is your experience on that? I'm really curious to hear. Who want to go first? Bill? You are smiling, so you have something to say.
Yeah, I'm smiling. You can tell you stories from personal experience. How my dad, ruled me out of the game of football. When I was 15 or 16, and when I had my growth spurt, and I was out for a year, and how then my mum kept me, in a good space where she said, "Listen, this is your hobby, and you go to school, and this is what you do now." So there's always that balance, but you're absolutely right in terms of the expectation that got created, by the system, but as well by us as clubs, as trying to convince under-8 players to join the academy at under-9. Parents nowadays in London, they drive to 5 different clubs probably, to find the right space for their son or for their daughter. And then obviously they get told how beautiful everything is, and everyone trying to get them across. So yeah, a lot of expectations are created, but again, it is our job to give them the reality of only 1% will make it, to the top level. So here you go in that sense where everyone believes then still they're the 1%, right? So it is the repetition of the information, of the reality, that the bubble is there. And ultimately we need to tell them the release will happen. It will happen at some stage. It is how much are you prepared, how much put you in the best possible position. But the parents, in terms of their behaviors, are the biggest role model for their kids. And that's the danger as well sometimes, when you see when things not go their way, what the parents think, they will blame some sort of staff member or coach or anyone else, and the kids will just follow that kind of principle. So we need to make sure we educate the parents alongside the kids in terms of their expectations and what kind of pressure they have, So we're trying to create as much as platforms as we have, to let the kids as well speak to their parents in a way where we try to create video work where the parents see what their kids want from them, right? In terms of their support, on a daily, weekly basis around the training, what happens during training, what happens on the way back, to kind of their homes. So the parents are a massive factor, and they were, for me as well, throughout my time. And there are difference between dad and mom and that kind of dynamic. But if I hadn't had that kind of balance of them two, not to have the burden of football and to feel that there's a burden from them in order for me to achieve something in football, because it wasn't just from dad at times, that was crucially important to me.
Yeah. Christian, do you have something you want to add?
As you were asking about Germany, I think it might be the same as in England or Spain or Italy. I think besides the fact that Per was speaking about the educating parents, I think another aspect that is really important is how much sacrifice do we as clubs actually request from the parents. So if our under-9 team is playing a tournament in Italy, do we let or do we invite the parents to travel with us? Because I'm still impressed by one story of a mom that was the mom of a player in Leverkusen. She initially started in the academy and she didn't like football. And then every once in a while she passed by a football match and somehow she liked the atmosphere. She got to know the other parents. Then she got invited to go to a tournament, and in an interview with us, she said that at some point she got addicted to the excitement of the whole thing. She lost a lot of social contacts, and she had a new social group, which were the other parents. And by the age of 15, this mom was so dependent on the football environment that releasing her son was not just a dramatic situation for her son, but also for herself. So I think we have to be sure that we create the right conditions for parents to also have a life apart from football and to have a view on the sacrifices that we ask from them.
Yeah. Manisha, you have something to add?
Yeah, I think that one around still, you know, remembering that they're children is key. So just, you know, almost touching on what Per and Christian said, that thinking, you know, and I think clubs, I've seen more and more clubs over time are now doing this, really thinking about how they work their season. So there's a lot more clubs now who perhaps won't just end in May. With the schoolboys, that they'll still carry on and do a summer program, and actually the off season will be during school holidays, and then what that allows for is the children to be children, them to be with their families. And what we try and encourage also is that go and try things that isn't just football. Now look, we know that they love the game and they're probably going to play football anyway, but it does give them a time away from the club, and then it's go and recharge and then come back in 6 weeks. So we try and align it to school, and I know that there are more and more clubs going in that direction.
Yeah. Okay. One more thing. Okay, at a higher level, because we are all here and we are experiencing football for quite some times, and we all want to make the game better. And many of the things are beyond our control. I don't know, social medias and the pressure of the game itself. But what else could be done in a higher level, according to your experience, in the way we design the competition, in terms of regulation? Do you think we can still protect the essence of the game and make it less stressful or not as stressful for players? Dr. Bennett, maybe you should start as a stakeholder who is at a higher level, maybe?
Yeah, I think that the key for us is that, you know, we recognize that, you know, we can't work in isolation. The one thing that I've realized over the years in doing this role is that, you know, working alongside the clubs is key. You know, we may go into a club and deliver a workshop once or twice a year, and we may not see those players again for the rest of the season. So we really rely upon the club staff who are working with these players daily for guidance from them. You know, as I said, you know, I've decided to move my work from a service-led approach, which was me trying to implement what I thought should be provided for support, to a kind of a needs-led approach where we're asking the players what it is they want, that they can access the service. I think it's key that the main stakeholders participate in this. And I was saying earlier on to Dan that obviously today is Mental Health Awareness Week, and what's been happening in the background. We've delivered a report today, the Mentally Healthy Declaration report, which showcases all the football family and stakeholders showcasing the work they're doing in their particular areas and fields. And the reason behind this report was just to showcase that there's a lot of stuff being done in the background and not many people are aware of it. Hopefully this report will showcase what we're doing and get people to be understanding about what we're trying to do here. But going back to what you said, Dan, I think it needs to start from the top. It needs to afford us to buy into it, buy into the same process, buy into the same pathway, because ultimately the main aim is to provide support to the individuals, clubs and players and our members. So the key for me would be a joint up approach where we all join up approach together and work together for the betterment of football, the betterment of these individuals as players and as a person.
Thank you, Michael. Any more points on this one?
May I add that towards the end of my career, you know, it was kind of as well a challenge for me to look beyond the playing career, right? I would have said, yeah, that worked quite successful for me, but then looking beyond and what was kind of my next step, what would be my transition be, that was kind of a challenge. And the club here at Arsenal really helped me with that, because they offered me basically a role 1 year before my contract was finished. So, you know, that really showed me. Then I started to think about the B license and the A license, and the PFA helped me massively with that. So I think, you know, to create an awareness, you know, for players to think a bit more, you know, about, you know, that I will get released, everyone get released. How can we help you? And but it showed me again, you know, how important your time as well at the club is in terms of your behaviors around club staff, teammates, fans, you know, how much you create as well an environment for yourself where people would think you can have a role to play, you know, moving forward, where you're a role model. So it is kind of on yourself as well to make a positive impact, you know, for when you are there, when you're present, but as well beyond the game. But the club and the PFA helped me massively in my transition to put me in a position which I probably didn't so much deserve in the first place, because I had zero experience in English football on the academy side. However, people, coaches, mentors here at Arsenal thought, you know, that might be a good fit because I conducted myself in the right way and was a role model for many teammates, and they saw me as someone who could be a role model for the next generation. So, yeah, I think in regards to that comment, I would say, you know, collaboration is key for the stakeholders and not work in isolation. As Michael said, that is crucial. And information, you know, what is there for players in the system is crucial as well.
Amazing. Guys, unfortunately, we have to wrap it up. We could discuss it at least for 45 minutes more. And again, I think it's a very, very important subject, which is not discussed enough. But I would like to thank you for being here with us, and thank you for those very important insights. I just want to, we will now take a break, and we will return at 2 p.m. for our next session on the topic of social media. So thanks again, guys. Bye-bye.